Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Alan Lau is a visionary serial entrepreneur, a leader in Canada's tech community, and a sought-after speaker and authoritative voice on entrepreneurship, the innovation economy, and the benefits of a diverse workforce. Alan is the co-founder of Toronto-based Wattpad, the global multi-platform entertainment company for original stories and leading social storytelling platform. In his previous role as CEO, Alan led an international team with an inspiring vision to leverage groundbreaking technology to fundamentally disrupt the entertainment industry while empowering diverse voices. After raising $120 million from top VCs in Silicon Valley, New York, Canada, and Asia in 2021, Wattpad was acquired by South Korean internet conglomerate Naver in a deal valued at more than $600 million US. Today, as executive advisor to Webtoon and Wattpad, Alan's strategic counsel and world-renowned expertise is shaping the future of web novels and new fiction formats. Under Alan's leadership, Wattpad grew into a community of nearly 100 million people who have written more than 1 billion uploads on the platform. Thousands of Wattpad stories have been adapted for other platforms and gone on to become blockbuster movies and #1 Netflix hits, Emmy-nominated television series, and best-selling books around the world. Alan is a board member of the Toronto International Film Festival, a cultural organization with a mission to transform the way people see the world through film. Alan sits on the board of directors for Mars Discovery District, North America's largest urban innovation hub. As a board member, Alan joined Mars in support of high-growth startups and scale-ups to drive breakthrough discoveries, grow the economy, and make an impact by solving real problems for real people. A leader in Canada's technology sector and startup ecosystem, Alan is a member of the Canadian Council of Innovators, a lobby group that advances the interests of Canadian technology companies at all levels of government. He is also the co-founder of Two Small Fish Ventures, a fund that invests in early-stage internet companies with strong network efforts. Alan received his bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Toronto's Electrical Engineering program. In 2020, he was inducted into the Engineering Alumni Hall of Distinction of the University of Toronto. He was twice named one of the top 50 most influential people by Toronto Life. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and wow, do I have an incredible guest lined up for you today. You already heard the official introduction, but with us today with our guest, we have a fellow business owner, a visionary, and like all of us, took his vision, took his passion, put it to the test, solved some painful problems, had an absolutely incredible exit. Alan, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. Such a pleasure to have you with us. And Alan, there's always a story behind the story. What's your story, Alan? What got you to where you are today?
Well, I would say there are so many things I can touch on. I can spend hours and hours talking about this, but I would say it's not one thing. It's not even five things. There are so many steps along my journey, and each step became the foundation of the next step. And that in turn became the foundation of the step following, and so on and so forth. Sometimes you just don't know where life would take you, but you still need to have a vision, but you also have to execute on it and step by step, and you get to where you want to be. It sounds very philosophical, but that's a good starting point.
Why don't we do this, Alan? For some of our listeners who aren't familiar with the company that you started, Wattpad, take us back to the beginning, because looking back, they were very different times than where we are today. And I know you and we've had a number of offline conversations, and you've shared this fascinating journey of how it started and where it went to. So why don't we start with that? So you had this idea for Wattpad. So firstly, for our listeners who don't know what Wattpad is and what it does, what is that exactly?
Yeah, Wattpad is an app that lets people discover and share stories from science fiction to romance and everything in between. We focus on fiction, reading, and writing. And the app is very global. We have close to 100 million monthly users around the world, of which about 5 million are writers, and they share 1 million new chapter of content on Wattpad in 50 languages every day. And cumulatively, we have over 1 billion chapter uploads. And one thing very interesting is they don't just share the content, the stories. People can comment and inline comment on the stories. For example, I would know which paragraph would be the most commented and why people are excited, why people are engaging, why people are so in love with the main character. We know all that. And based on all the insight and data, we take the best stories and turn them into TV shows, movies, and print books. Number one on Netflix, Emmy nominated, best-selling books, New York Times bestseller, you name it, we have them all. And at this moment in time, we have about 100 projects, TV shows, movies, print books that we are working on, that going through the adaptation process. So like in Indonesia, the number one TV shows, the top streaming platform came off Wattpad. Number one on Netflix just a few months ago, Through My Window, is a Spanish movie, but it's number one globally on Netflix, and that came off Wattpad too. So these are just a few examples, and we started the company 15 years ago, and that's where we are today.
Wow, I mean, 100 million plus users a month, and really, you're doing today what back in the day probably wasn't even possible. Technology has changed, and it's allowed you to do this. Without going through the entire story, because that is probably episodes in and of itself, why don't you quickly take us back to the origin story 15 years ago? So firstly, what gave you this idea of books online? Because we take it for granted today. It's so obvious to us today, but 15 years ago, it wasn't. It was a very different world at that time.
Yeah, the idea actually started in 2002, exactly 20 years ago. I was the CTO and co-founder of another company called Tira Wireless. Long story short, Tira was mobile gaming publisher. So we published games, not Snake, but for those who remember the Nokia phone at that time, you can play ping pong or Snake or some very simplistic games on those phones. And we were one of the publishers publishing hockey games, and NHL Power Shot Hockey came off, but we also help other publishers to publish games on those feature phones. But what I want to say is I love mobile technologies. I love gadgets, but I don't play games. We kind of we started off as a technology platform and then accidentally became a mobile gaming publisher, but it wasn't our original intention. So I was very passionate about what I built, but I wasn't passionate about the content that utilizing our technology. So in my spare time, my friends would know my media consumption is mostly reading, and my first side project in the evening was, of course, combining mobile and reading. So I built a mobile reading app on the Nokia phone, but instantly I know it's really crappy idea because you could only read 3 lines of text at a time. So reading a paragraph, you have to scroll a million times. So no one would use it. I wouldn't use it myself. I parked that idea. Fast forward to year 2006, the most popular phone at that time was the flip phone, the Razr. That phone, the screen size was quite a bit larger than the candy bar Nokia phone. So I resurrected that idea. Now is the time. That's what I thought. Now is the time. Let me start this project again. And out in the blue, a very good friend of mine, his name is Ivan. Ivan is, of course, the Wattpad co-founder with me now. And we were friends for many years because he worked for Tira as well. He was one of the early employees. That's how I knew him. So anyway, he messaged me, "Hey, Alan, I'm working on a new product idea. Can you check it out and give me some feedback?" Click on that link. Guess what I saw? He was building a mobile reading app as well, independently.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yes.
And at the same time, he was quite a few steps ahead of me. Not only he built the reading app, he also built a website where people can share their writings. As you can see,
Okay.
this is very similar to how I describe Wattpad today. Of course, Wattpad today has the movie business, the publishing business, and a million other things that we also do. But the idea actually has not changed in a way. We just keep on expanding and finding adjacent areas. Anyway, that's the genesis of the story.
And what's interesting, and for our listeners, it's an easy nuance to miss. But Alan, you said something really important. Over 20 years ago, when you built the first reading app on the little phone and you only had 2 or 3 lines to read, I mean, how many times as business owners do we fall in love with our own idea and we just get blinded by that? But you were smart enough and intuitive enough to say, you know what, maybe I'm ahead of my time. The technology is not a great experience. I'm going to park it. Let's see where time goes. Let's see how all things work out. Was that natural to you to do that, or what was behind that?
I guess the main reason is I try to eat my own dog food. I should be the best customer of my own product. And when I used it, I know it's sucky. Of course, as a prototype, it's meant to be sucky. But even if I spent the time to polish production level product is still very sucky because I could not change the industry trends. And the industry trends at that time was the Nokia phone. I could not change the hardware. So there are constraints that I could not impact. And you have to recognize that and perhaps move on to your next idea. Idea is cheap. Yeah. Any entrepreneur would tell you they don't run out of ideas, but they run out of time to execute on the right ideas.
Well said. And so here it was, yourself and Ivan now, you got together, you started collaborating. And I remember offline you were telling me that when you first got going, I mean, today you talk about hundreds of millions of users and Netflix and movies and books. But when we go back to the beginning, it was a very humble beginning. And I remember you were saying you knew this was going to work. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a teenage girl, I believe, who had put a story online, one of the first, and there was feedback that was taking place back and forth with the readers, and that's where it clicked for you. You know what? We're onto something here. This is different than some of the other competitors or where the marketplace was going. Can you walk us through that insight and that experience?
Yes. In the very, very beginning, we built the website, we built the reading app on the flip phone. We launched it. We thought we would attract millions of users overnight. Well, we got it almost spot on, except that it's not a million. We missed by quite a few zeros, maybe closer to 1,000. When you have a product after 1 year, you have 1,000 customers. Amazing. If you have a free product that you give away and only 1,000 people using it, you suck. We were really struggling, I would say, in the first couple of years, but we got one thing right. I think the mobile reading idea was right. We were just maybe a year ahead of time. And then iPhone came out, and then the idea of user-generated content started to take shape. When we first started, YouTube was already like 1 year old, but you could also say only 1 year old. So sharing your content, whatever that is, on the internet was actually a very nascent idea at that time. But one thing we got right was the product without any content, there would be no audience because no one would come to read nothing. And without the readers, no writer would upload anything because there's no audience. So it's a chicken and egg problem. And we solved that problem by using public domain books. That's how we got the 1,000 users. Mostly, I would say 100% readers came to Wattpad to read the content, but at least we had some audience. However, it lasts for 2 years without any meaningful traffic until that teenage girl came in 2008, 2 years after we started the company. She uploaded a teenage romance story and she brought some friends over and everyone was commenting, wow, this is amazing. When are you going to write the next chapter? And it's serialized content. It's like Charles Dickens' way of writing story all over again. And we caught that. We caught how engaging people are. We caught that the engagement, the comments, the interaction was the key. We caught that the serialization, the cliffhanger, they were all part of that amazing interaction. And then we capture that and keep on improving that experience. And then the rest is history.
And you know what's amazing with that, Alan? I mean, in the beginning, we'll talk about this. You were bootstrapping the company and you were like a cockroach startup, and you were smart enough that you took public domain books and you put them online. And from what you're saying in the story that you just shared, you were doing okay, but it was nothing really to write home about. But here's the lesson. Here's the takeaway for the listeners. Done is always better than perfect. You're in the marketplace. You could not have planned that a teenage girl would put a chapter up that would get a community engaged and talking about it. And that gave you the insight of what you could do with this. Truth is stranger than fiction, but because you were already in market, you took that chance. You didn't sit back and say, well, wait till we're perfect and then we'll go to market. No, we're going to go now, see what we can do, and we'll improve it. And like you said, the rest is history. You never looked back once you had that. And I'm curious, once you started to get momentum, you became really a target. You were on the radar. I'm not going to mention names here. You may choose to, but you were on the target of some very substantial companies who are in the ebook business, very large, funded, who could outmaneuver you in the blink of an eye. I mean, you were a rounding error to them, yet you were scrappy and you figured things out. You stayed ahead of them, and ultimately, you're still here to talk about it. So how did you go up against incredibly organized and capitalized competition?
Very, very good question. And I'll be happy to mention names. It's Amazon, of course. It's okay to mention names. We started in 2006. It was a year before iPhone came out, 2 years before the App Store. The first version 1 of iPhone did not have the App Store. It was perhaps 3 years before Android, but also 1 year before Kindle even existed. So we were ahead of time, but not by a decade, but by 1 or 2 years. That, to your point, we had to be early, but not too early. That's how we could capture the industry trends. Sometimes you have to be lucky, but you have to create the environment for you to capture that luck. And we did exactly that. But back to the e-reading Amazon competition during that time, it was very interesting because no one thought about e-reading before Kindle launched. And after Kindle launched, everyone thought about e-reading. So in a way, depends on your perspective. You can say, oh, wow, there are so many competitors right now. But on the other hand, you could also say, as a small company, I don't have to educate or bear the responsibility to create industry trends. People already educating billions of people. You can read on your mobile devices, and you have a device that can install different apps that include reading apps. That education was done by Apple, done by Android, Google, done by Amazon. All in a way, it sounds easy. All we had to do was find the gap that these big giants could not easily capture. And one thing that we, of course, in hindsight, is very much easier for me to articulate, but Amazon is an e-commerce company. And in the DNA, it's all about selling stuff, including ebooks to you. But ebooks is just a piece of content. There's no comments. There's no social network. There's no community. There's no interaction. In fact, if you have ever used the Kindle app or the Kindle device, Do you think you can contact the writers of the book that you just bought? No chance. They don't let you. But we did the exactly opposite. In a way, we found the differentiators, and I'm just using the social network, the community as one example. There are quite a few other examples. That's your competitors that are well-funded, 10 times, 100 times larger than you, but they are also very rigid. There are certain things that they would not do. If you can find that one thing or two things or 5 things that your competitor could not do for whatever reason, capture that and own that, then you could fight the giants.
And so again, for our listeners, let's just pause here for a moment, because Alan, you shared some terrific strategies that really helped you grow. And one of the takeaways is, hey, we don't have to be the ones educating the marketplace. We'll leave that to our competitors. Maybe they're not competitors. We'll call them allies, whatever the case may be. Let them use their billions of dollars to educate the marketplace. We're going to focus on what we do best. And so you knew what your DNA was all about. You knew your heart and your soul and what was going on there. It's about a social community around custom-made content by the community itself. And unlike a lot of companies, when Amazon enters into the picture, oh my goodness, we're done. Let's just go out of business, or let's sell to them, or, we don't have a future. You were smart. You didn't panic. And you said, okay, we're going to keep on doing what we're doing, and we're going to beat them at their own game because they're so big, they're so rigid, they're all about e-commerce. We're not. Let's just keep on doing what we're doing. And ultimately, that won the day for you. And so the other takeaway is recognize your strengths, play to your strengths, don't try and imitate the competition, do what you do best, and everything else will fall into place. Maybe not easily, but it'll work out when you have that grit and that determination. And so, Alan, I know you started off private, like a scrappy cockroach startup, as I like to say. And my company, Embanet, we were reminiscing about that offline, how we had these 2 scrappy cockroach startups that really made the difference because we didn't have the money. And we always say that resources are nothing compared to resilience. So resilience trumps resources. You don't have the money. You got to figure out how to be that much smarter, that much better. But there did come a point in time in the company, Alan, where you did go and you raised money for the company growth. So when did you realize you were at the point of, hey, we can't bootstrap this anymore? We want to grow. We need to get some outside money in. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it was around 2009, 2010. We had maybe 500,000 users already. So for lack of a better term, the product market fits in terms of the product. It's there. People love it. People are using it. It might not be in millions. People love it. However, we knew that from day one, our number one goal is to build that network as quickly as possible. And we purposely did not introduce any monetization because, for example, if we have a paywall, fewer people could pay or want to pay, it creates friction in using the product and joining the community, for example. So we purposely stay away from that. And our ideas at that time were, when you have 1 billion users, there will be 1 million ways to make money. Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on getting to 1 billion first. Billion is just an aspirational number. For any company, you should start thinking about monetization when you have tens of millions of users. That's the right time, at least. Anyway, because it's a 2-step process. Unlike some companies, the monetization or business model is built in from day one. You know how to make money. And if you could make a lot of money early on, figure out the business model, figure out how to generate revenue, and more importantly, profits early on, then you might not need to raise capital, but we need to build tens of millions of user base first before we monetize. Then obviously we need money to get there before we flip the switch on monetization. That's where it's becoming so obvious that we need to, it's a typical venture-backed company, leverage capital to build the moat and then build the business on top. I think around that time, we start to raise money from first angel and then institutional investors.
And you went really worldwide. I mean, you raised $120 million from some of the top VCs. I mean, in Silicon Valley, out of New York, some in Canada, some in Asia. But what I really like, and there's another powerful takeaway, actually 2 takeaways. One I should have mentioned earlier, timing is everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2000, your timing was off. You knew it. You were too early.
Mm-hmm.
You parked it. You waited for the marketplace to come up. You were just too much of a visionary, Alan. You're too smart for your own good at that time. But the marketplace caught up. But the second valuable lesson, how many business owners, how many entrepreneurs or founders do we hear, oh, I got this idea. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get some venture capital. They're going to fund me. I'm going to make $1 gazillion. You actually did the opposite. Let me see if I can get some traction. And so 500,000 users, that is proof of concept. That's more than proof of concept. Hey, this is now working. Well, we haven't monetized it yet, but we have 500,000 people who can attest that they like this idea. So I would imagine that, listen, fundraising is always time consuming. There's always hoops and hurdles to jump through. But I would imagine the fact that you can point to 500,000 users made it a whole lot easier for you to get people to buy into, hey, this concept works. Now let's grow it. Let's monetize it. Did that help play a role with that proof of concept because you waited, because you were patient?
Absolutely. At the same time, I would also say many investors ask me, what the heck, where's the dollar sign? Where's the money? It only worked for those investors who could see the vision that I saw. It's always very clear to the investors, we want to build a user base first. We might start monetizing, but not very aggressively. And then we'll figure out monetization. But not everyone like that idea. So I just want to clarify. But to your point about timing is absolutely right. What we have observed, especially perhaps during the dot-com days, and also what we've seen perhaps not this year, but last year, 2021 and 2020, a lot of companies, they raise capital without knowing why they need the capital. When you raise capital, it's not just because I want to have more money on the balance sheet. There has to be a purpose.
Yes.
Each round of funding that we raise, the use of proceeds always very, very clear. For example, earlier stage, we just have too many product improvements that we want to build. And our team was so tiny, we need to hire more engineers. For example, that's the purpose for early days. And then for our Series C, that was the second in 2014. That was the second, I believe, the second last round of funding. We raised Series D afterwards, and before the company got acquired. Series C was monetization. Now we have 50 million users using the product. It's time to flip the switch. Let's raise some capital, build another team to help us monetize. And for Series D, for example, is okay, now we have another revenue stream called entertainment. We are making movies now. Let's raise more capital for that purpose.
And so let's listen to that progression that you just shared with us, because again, a number of valuable takeaways. So you brought some initial capital in, and it goes without saying, you didn't really mention this, but both yourself and Ivan, in the first 3-4 years, you were writing the check every month out of your personal savings or your life savings, whatever the case was, to keep the company afloat. And I imagine between the two of you, probably a lot of late nights and early mornings just to keep this company going. You get 500,000 users, you get some funding in, but you're also surrounding yourself above and beyond the capital from the venture capitalists or the private equity that came in. What you just said right now was you also surrounded yourself with smart people who helped you get the business to 40, 50 million users. You now have a business model with the entertainment industry and with the people around you, some of your investors and your board, and otherwise you're then able to further expand on that and take the company into different areas and then raise even some more money to take you to a whole other level. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, I think it's correct to say that. What I would like to add is the early days was extremely stressful. We are talking about a company with virtually no revenue. And during the first few years, we were taking side contract. We didn't have a job. It's not like we have a day job, full-time job, and then in the evening building this company. We were full-time, but we need food on the table. So we take side jobs and contracts. And then when we start to raise capital from venture capitalists, and you're absolutely right. I would say majority of the people on our cap table, our investors, our shareholders, of course, they are capital providers, but they provide way more than just the capital to the company. For example, some of them, they came from the entertainment background. So through the connections, it's easier for us to build the entertainment business. Some investors in tech companies that very similar to ours. We have one investor who wrote the first check to Twitter, Tumblr at the time, SoundCloud, Foursquare. As you can see, they are all networks of different content or different usage, a double-sided network, very similar to what we do. It just happened that we were building a reading, writing network, but the knowledge, know-how we can learn from other CEOs, the investors' portfolio company to apply that knowledge. So that cannot tell you how much it helped because it help us avoid a lot of these strategic mistakes because 10 other companies did that and failed already. We don't need to try. And if one thing that 5 companies, similar companies try already and it was very successful, I would be an idiot not to at least give it a shot.
And so, Alan, what I'm hearing you say with that is, hey, yes, myself and Ivan, we had the vision. We were smart enough to know what to program, but certain areas that the business needed, we weren't the people. And we knew we weren't the people, and that's what we looked for in our investors who could help with their network, with their connections, with their ideas, that all together, yes, we owned a smaller piece of the pie, but it's a bigger pie than what we could have done on our own, or maybe we couldn't have done it on our own. Maybe just left to ourselves, we'd still be in our basements today and the world passed us by. Who knows? But you were smart enough to recognize we can't do this on our own.
Precisely. Well, both Ivan and I are engineers. Ivan got his MBA as well, but as you can see, in terms of know-how, the companies, the founders at least dominated on the product and engineering side, but not the business side. We have to find people on the cap table that can complement that. And over time, we learn from those people. So if you look at where I am today versus 15 years ago, the same Alan Lau, these two are very, very different people in terms of skill, knowledge, in terms of know-how, in terms of pretty much everything. As an entrepreneur, as the company continues to grow, your job has changed. In fact, your job probably changed every year or two. How you spend your time, how you manage people, how you lead people, who you hire, is constantly changing. And you yourself, as an entrepreneur, you have to improve and change and grow as well. That's the only way you can scale a company.
And Alan, what I admire about you, and I hope our listeners are picking up on this as well, you're humble and you're modest. Let's fast forward, and the listeners will see what I mean by that. So fast forward, and we're going to go back in a moment on this, but in 2021, it was a South Korean company, and some of our audience may be familiar with them, some of them won't be. Naver came along, and for over $600 million, over $500 million, $600 million, or almost at $750 million, your company was acquired and you stayed on. And looking back at that, many people who would have gone through that, and firstly, not many people do, could be having an ego. Oh, yes, it was all me, and I'm going to take all the credit, and it was my brilliance that did that. But here we just heard you say, well, it was a team effort, and we didn't know what we didn't know. And yes, we're engineers, but that's about it. And we needed some help with that. And that ability to be humble, I would imagine, helped you. So can you talk to us about how, as the founder, as the visionary, both yourself and Ivan, being humble, how did that serve you as the company continued to grow and really get out there and make an impact?
I would say 2 things. First of all, absolutely takes a village. By the time I stepped down, a year after the acquisition, I stepped aside from my CEO role. I'm still advising them, so I'm still involved, but not the day-to-day. But by the time I step aside, I should say, the company has 300 people. Can I do this all by myself and with Ivan? No chance. Just not possible. I might be the face of the company, but I absolutely should not and would not take full credit. I'll take some credit, don't get me wrong, but the team, they deserve a lot of credit to get to where we are. But I would also say kind of something that I alluded to early on, the industry trends I cannot control. But you could see this along the journey a few times already. I captured the opportunity when iPhone came out. I captured the opportunity when the $25 Android phone was around the world. I captured the opportunity. Kindle educated the world. You can read electronically. And I captured the opportunity when the explosion of content, when Netflix and then shortly after, all the other streamers, they produce so much content. The demand for content was exploding. That's how we leverage that to build the entertainment business. So seize the opportunity, I think is one theme. Back to the acquisition, the acquisition started, the conversation started, the process started in the second half of 2020. At that point in time, we were very close to practically break even. Let me put it this way. So we would never need to raise more capital if we choose not to. At the same time, we felt like the entertainment business to fully capture the potential, we probably need more capital because as a movie or entertainment is a very capital intensive business. We thought about our numbers were good enough to consider going public, but it might not be the right type of company to go public yet because we might not have the predictability, and especially the movie business is still growing, quarterly driven profit and revenue, top line, bottom line, probably not the right time to do it, even though the absolute numbers are good enough to do that. And then an acquisition offer came, and we thought we have all the optionality in front of us. And this is a very interesting time because now we have an offer. Not saying we never thought about selling the company, but that was never, ever the number one goal. We want to build an independent company, a self-sustaining company, and we're okay with selling under the right circumstances. That's how we always operate, but we never optimize the company for acquisition. We never did that. So anyway, acquisition offer came. We leverage that to run the process. Yeah, maybe we should test the market. If we don't like what we see, we could go public, we could not raise, we could raise another round. We have all the options in front of us. I think at the end, we found Naver that is a very good strategic partner because they built a very similar business in Asia already, mostly on the digital comics, but conceptually very similar to Wattpad, but extremely complementary because Wattpad focuses on fiction, they focus on comics. So it's not competitive. And anyway, when we started talking the synergy, the business synergy, instantly it was there. It's so obvious. That's why we made the call. But at the end of the day, it's all about optionality.
And what's interesting about that, Alan, is again, you're always looking forward, not back. And how many business owners or founders back in 2020, the company was just about to turn profitable. You don't need any more money or to raise capital. And you could have kept on going down that path. And hey, we made it. We did it. Life is good. We don't have to continue innovating. But you saw, hey, it's great that we're here, but it's always a but. If we want to take it to the next level, we can't stay still. And you know what? We're going to need some more capital to do that. And we've got a good thing going here. Let's make it even better. And so timing is everything. You had a knock at the door. It was the right time. You had the right mindset. You knew you were at an inflection point, and obviously the numbers made sense for everyone, and off you went with that. When you look back, Alan, at the whole process of the liquidity event, the discussions, the negotiations, the back and forth, I'm sure both parties were posturing a little bit, as it always happens. Is there a strategy or two that really made the difference for you that you can share with our listeners?
I would say, looking back, we were very lucky to have a lot of great people surrounding us, including many of our investors. So, of course, they've done acquisition and IPO and all those things before. So we are not going blind. And, you don't sell your company every day. So everyone who is selling the company, you are the rookie. You are dealing with the very experienced investment bankers on the other side. They do this every day, and you do it once in your life. So in terms of knowledge and experience and expertise, it's very asymmetrical. It's not a fair competition. So surrounding yourself with the right people that can help you through the process, absolutely key. But at the end of the day, like many people would tell you, great companies are not sold. They are bought. The distinction is you don't have to sell. It's so counterintuitive, but if you don't have to sell, you can stand very firm on many things that you want to negotiate, including the price, because you know that I don't need the cash, right? So in a way, it's actually help. I think this optionality thing applies so broadly in life. It's not just selling the company, in many other aspects, from wealth management, from making career decisions. One thing I always do is I always ask myself, at least in for all those important decisions, but I think smaller ones too, what's the plan B? What's the worst case scenario? It may sound like it's very conservative because I'm thinking about the downside, not the upside, but knowing the downside actually enable you to swing for the fence in the right context. In this case, it's a perfect example. If I was running out of cash, if Wattpad was running out of cash, I have no choice but to sell. Do you think I would fetch amazing price? Do you think I would negotiate all the good terms? Probably you might not be in as good a position to negotiate.
Absolutely. And we've had buyers come on the Deep Wealth podcast and they say, Jeffrey, when we smell blood in the water, that a potential business owner or seller is desperate or they're fearful, we're all over that. And, our valuation goes out the window because now we're going in for the kill. They're desperate. Who doesn't like a good deal? We're going to do that because we pick that up. But the other thing that you're saying, Alan, is with the plan B, but you didn't quite say it this way. I'm going to put it out there. Again, you're always humble. You're humble and you put things in perspective. And I think that's easier said than done. And even with what you said, hey, I'm only going to sell a company once in my life. Maybe if I'm really fortunate, maybe 2 or 3 times, but at least for now, it's going to be once. Let me get people around me who do this all the time and let me look to them for some help and advice. And you're not checking out of the process. You're not going to go with them on autopilot that you're not doing anything, but you recognize, I don't know what I don't know. Let me get some help with that. So I think between being humble and then saying, okay, deal doesn't go through, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I have this amazing company. We have 20, 30 million users. We'll figure out something else. I don't really need to do it. My financial needs at this point in time are taken care of. Could they be better? Sure, they could be better, but they could also be worse, and they're not. So now I can, in your words, swing for the fence because I know my plan B is a pretty good plan.
That's right. Precisely.
Some terrific advice and some insights. And for all of our listeners out there, really be humble. Look at your plan B. Have that confidence and always look for those inflection points. Alan, I love what you said. First, when it was the Nokia phone, just wasn't the right marketplace. And then from there to the Razr phone, okay, now we got something. And then from there to a $25 Android, and then to the iPhone, and then to the Kindle, you jumped on all those opportunities. You weren't at the center of it in terms of the technology or bringing it to the marketplace, but you're always looking for those inflection points. At Deep Wealth, we call that step number 1, the big picture. Hey, what's going on out there? Where's a market disruption I can create? So between being humble, looking for the inflection points, surrounding yourself with all the right people, and of course, having just quality world-class offering that really made all the difference, and a tremendous congratulations on your exit. Before we start to wrap up, I'm just curious, you've been on with the company now and it's a little bit different. You're not in the chair, so to speak, leading the charge. How's your post-exit life treating you? What's that like for you?
It's great. I loved my job. And if I were to continue the plan B that we just talked about, I don't want to sound plan too negative. It's not really a plan B, an equally good plan A. I could continue and I'll be more than happy to continue. However, I would also say it was a very intense job. I did it for 15 years. And am I going to start another company again? A lot of entrepreneurs could not resist the temptation, but I know that it's going to take another 10 years. Am I going to spend another 10, 15 years in building another company? Maybe not. I think at this stage in my life, I think there are other things that I want to do. And one of the things that I really enjoy and in the past few years in a small way is investing, helping other entrepreneurs. It's not just about money, is about investing in early stage companies is really fun and mind stimulating because you are trying to figure out the product market fit and turning that into a product is already a big step. Turning that usable product into a business, that's another leap. And that's the most interesting part. And once the business model has figured out, once the team has built a few hundred people or a few thousand people, many companies, I wouldn't say most, but many companies, they become optimizing. Every day is status quo, whereas early stage is very, very different. That's why moving forward, I won't start another company. I'm 100% sure about that. But whatever time I have, I would focus on investing in early stage tech companies. I already started a venture fund many years ago. My wife, Eva, she's the general partner. She's running with that for many years with amazing results. It's called Two Small Fish Ventures. I'm the smaller fish tagging along. She's the big fish. Whenever I have more time, and increasingly I should have more time, I would be working on that.
And again, Alan, I've said it before, is worth mentioning again, just your practicality of how you look at things. And so I'm hearing you say, you know what, Jeffrey, look, 15 very intensive years that I did, not prepared to do that again on my own. But I do love that startup phase of what's going on and that energy with that. So myself and my wife, Eva, you were saying we have this venture fund that we started where we can help startups. And obviously, Alan, you have a lot to say about startups and how to go from zero to hero, and it energizes you. And that's something that really gives your life some purpose. And there's a lot to be said for that, because in the post-exit life, and I'll put myself out there, you know what? I wasn't as wise as you. I didn't do that preparation and that planning. I got lost in the early days of my post-exit life. And even to this day, I'm still catching up on that and making things right from when I did things wrong. And you're on the much better path. You've put some time, some thought. Hey, what do I love doing that isn't going to be overly consuming time-wise, that I have the energy to give, that has me feel energized? And you found that for you. And for business owners, that's really our challenge. Before your exit, before your liquidity event, figure out your post-exit life. Alan, you did that with your wife, Eva, when you started your venture fund before you sold the business. And now it's more in the front and center of your life post-exit. So congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. In a way, that was somewhat by design. When we started Two Small Fish Ventures 8 years ago, it was an angel fund. Now it's a proper venture capital with external LPs, very typical GP LP structure like many other venture funds out there. But I would say the seed was planted 8 years ago, because I was thinking, what's my whole exit life? If I ever exit, I might not, and that's okay. But if I did, I don't want to be like a championship winning team. After winning the championship, what's next? What should I do?
Absolutely. This was the Two Small Fish. That was your plan B 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
Before you even had any inkling that the company would sell. Hey, but this is my plan B. We'll see where it goes. Maybe it goes somewhere, maybe it doesn't, but it went somewhere. And you're now in the front and center of it. And once again, your thinking really made the difference for you. So lots to learn about. Alan, you and I can continue down this path. And maybe there's another episode. We're talking offline. You're saying, Jeffrey, you're so gracious. Jeffrey, after our interview, if there's other questions that come up, let me know and we can talk about it. Maybe, Alan, there's another episode in the making here that we can get to, but one thing at a time. Let's get back to this episode. And you've been very generous with your time. So let's start to wrap things up with a thought experiment. And I'm really privileged. Every guest on the Deep Wealth podcast, I feel so privileged to ask this question. So here's what I'd like to ask you, Alan. Think about the movie Back to the Future. And in the movie, you have this incredible car, the DeLorean car, that can take you to any point in time. So imagine now it's tomorrow morning and you look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car sitting there, but the door is open and is waiting for you to hop on in. So you hop into the DeLorean car and you can now go to any point in your life. Alan, as a young child or a teenager, whatever point in life you would go to, Alan, what are you telling your younger self in terms of, hey, Alan, here's some life wisdom or some life lessons, or do this, but don't do that? What does that sound like?
Well, two things I would do. Number one, I have to say this because one thing I still regret is I did not take enough pictures of the early days. So I was onto that car, take more pictures in the early days. But to answer your question about telling my younger self, I would say perhaps I should start my first company a little bit earlier. I learned a lot from my first few years of my career because I worked for really fast growing startup. I learned so much from the entrepreneurs, the founders. at that time. Then it took me a few more years to start my first company. And one thing I did not have the appreciation at that time, but now I know, to build a very successful company, it cannot be done in 2 years, probably a decade, if not more. And you don't have that many chances. Each one is 1 decade or 15 years. You have 2 at best at most. If you start your first company in your late 30s, for example, or early 40s, you have 1 shot. But the more shot on goal, you have higher chance to score. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a regret, but if I could optimize a little bit more, maybe I should have started my company a little bit earlier. But hey, timing was right for me. I started Wattpad a year before the iPhone came out, a year before the Kindle came out. It was perfect. So it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm not.
Well, Alan, I think you did incredibly well. And who knows, maybe in some multiverse, you started a company much earlier and you started a whole number of companies, had all these different exits. But what we do know is congratulations. You did incredibly well with Wattpad and how you took it from a vision to reality and growing it along the way and having just a whirlwind of an exit. You don't hear that all that often, but you did it. So congratulations with that, and really a heartfelt thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom. Alan, we're going to put this in the show notes. For our listeners who'd like to reach out to you, what's the best place online for them to get in touch?
I can be found online very easily. I guess the best way is perhaps use my LinkedIn or Too Small Fish email or Wattpad email. All 3 of them can reach out to me in the professional context. Very easy to guess. Alan@wattpad.com. Alan@twosmallfish.vc, and LinkedIn is not the best product, but that's where my professional network is. So that's where I maintain my contacts sometimes.
Terrific. And for our listeners there, you heard it from the master himself, how to get in touch with him with questions, and what a wealth of resources you are, Alan. Thank you so much for that. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.
You too. Hope the audience feels safe and stay safe and healthy. That's the most important thing. And find joy in life.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.